Even the metro system has pretty decent coverage. I wish we could use it in-game, but anyway.
Write that down! Write that down!
Well, I guess someone at CD Projekt Red liked my first video. That, or my timing, is just incredible. Last week, out of nowhere, CDPR announced Update 2.1 for Cyberpunk. They had previously stated that they were done updating 2077 after Update 2.0 and the Phantom Liberty expansion, but it looks like they had just a little bit more to give us. New vehicles, improved bike combat and stunts, and more time to Netflix and chill with Pan Am? What more could we ask for? Well, there's one thing that I and so many of you are more stoked about than anything else. And that is the long-awaited introduction of a rideable metro system in Night City. So why don't we check it out together? I'm gonna start at Congress and MLK, one of the central stations that shows off a good chunk of the 5 different lines and 19 different stations that the NCART has to offer. The process is pretty streamlined. You don't have to search for the right platform and wait for your train to show up. You can just select the line and direction that you'd like to go, and then you're on the metro. There's some great attention to detail in here, from the wayfinding inside the vehicles that let you know what station you're approaching, as well as the speed of the vehicle, which is a very Night City detail to have on the metro cars. There are some flat bench seats to take a seat on, and some vertical and overhead poles to grab onto, but otherwise it's relatively sparse and surprisingly lacking in in-your-face advertising in here. While we enjoy the view, I want to take a look at some of the great comments you all left on my first video. It's so cool to see how many of us went into Night City looking for the same type of walkable urbanism, and how excited everyone is that the metro, a truly fundamental piece of infrastructure for any city, is finally in the game. It also reflects really well on CD Projekt Red that they would add this feature at all, much less 3 full years after Cyberpunk originally released. It was probably a ton of work to make the NCART work this well, but the developers at CDPR have shown an incredible dedication to making sure their game was as polished and feature complete as possible before moving on from it. And I'm genuinely impressed by that. Some of your comments picked up on some interesting urbanist details that I had missed, like Hold Your Bar, who noticed that there is no traffic on the water. Night City is a coastal city, with a river even, but there's absolutely nothing happening on the water at all. Cargo ships are a pivotal part of any city's industrial and commercial fabric, which is a big reason why basically any city you look at on a map is next to a body of water. Even Phoenix, Arizona. So it's definitely a little surprising, but there is certainly a ton of air traffic regardless. Maybe Night City gets its copious amounts of weapons shipped there via aerial vehicle? Speaking of things that are conspicuously missing, McRaza pointed out that a lot of NC is very look but don't touch. There are plenty of shop fronts, businesses, and so on, but the player can't enter or participate. Personally, I understand why this is the case. It would be asking a lot to make such a huge and dense city fully explorable inside and out. To be honest, I don't know if any game developer is capable of that level of detail. And really, there's plenty of nooks and crannies to explore already. But who knows? We'll see what CDPR is cooking up with Project Orion soon enough. And on the topic of feeling separated from the city, Swans noted that streets for cars cut through pedestrian areas almost violently, which isn't far off from real urban planning practices with strong roots in racist and classist motivations. This is a very astute observation and really gets at the heart of how urban planning can affect our lives. Redlining is defined as the practice of refusing a loan or insurance to someone because they live in an area deemed to be a poor financial risk. It was a policy formalized by the United States Federal Housing Commission in the 1930s, whose own underwriting manual stated that incompatible racial groups should not be permitted to live in the same communities. And home insurance companies began refusing to insure homes owned by Black and brown people because of risk. While sprawling new single-family homes requiring exclusively white residents began to pop up on the outskirts of cities, people of color had little choice but to move into inner-city housing projects, which were quickly left to rot. In fact, the FHA's manual recommends that highways be a good way to separate African Americans from white neighborhoods. There's a neighborhood right next to the suburban sprawl of Rancho Coronado that illustrates this division perfectly. A strip of run-down apartment buildings squeezed right underneath a major freeway. The conditions people had to endure in these neighborhoods was and is truly unacceptable. And these areas stand as an example of what happens when racism is institutionalized. American cities are still recovering from this era of redlining and smashing highways through cities. And Pretzel Boy is one of the many people living here that realized something is very wrong indeed. I actually got really f***ing frustrated with my own city after playing Cyberpunk. It's like the people designing real North American cities are very silly or something. No pedestrian bridges anywhere, no inner-city trains like Tokyo, forcing school children to cross highways twice a day. Like, what the hell is going on? It could always be worse, though, like Pilot Light points out. It blew my mind when I went to Dubai and saw 0 sidewalks for pedestrians. You literally have to drive to get anywhere, even to cross the street. It was super weird.
We were walking all over Dubai, man. Yo, bro, Dubai was lit. I was like...
We also have the perspective of some European commenters who feel positively about Night City, like Oculicious, who thinks that because the game was designed by Europeans, even in our worst nightmares, we can't imagine not having sidewalks. And Le Docteur, who lives and studies in Strasbourg, and feels that Night City is indeed very walkable, with wide and safe sidewalks, pedestrian crossings decently well distributed, and even usable sidewalks on the faster roads between districts. I don't know, man. I think Strasbourg is probably a bit nicer to walk around, but hey. Some comments I received on the last video were decidedly more negative. These commenters seem to think that, joking or not, Night City is made less dystopian by the lack of cyclists on the roads here. It always makes me a little sad to see this attitude towards bike riders, as someone who rides a bike all over the city I live in. Bikes are a pretty pivotal part of a walkable city, as places from Amsterdam to Tokyo can demonstrate. Bikes don't pollute, they take up about 1/10 of the space of an average car, and they improve the mental and physical health of the rider. Not to mention that they address the last mile problem with regards to building transit systems like the NCART. Don't sleep on bicycles, my dudes. And then there's this guy, who may or may not be receiving funding from the automotive industry.
This is big sidewalk propaganda. If these city planners had their way, they would pave over your house with sidewalks. Is that the future you want? More interstates, bigger freeways, 10 plus lanes on each side. You mean a superhighway in the sky with a loop-de-loop like in Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Cowards!
That's my friend Medium Dalton, by the way. Go check out his channel. He makes great stuff. Alright, here's my stop. Back to my shift at the murder factory. Thanks for watching, and please leave some more great comments down below. Like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing some more content like this, and stay tuned for something a little bit different.